Okay, we all know, being an indoor enthusiast, you're going to have a lot of breakage on your heli. Not out there flying in the fields and landing in nice soft grass. You're going to be taking some major hits that are definitely no fun and can get expensive. So some of the first parts that you probably want to get a hold of is the rotor head linkage, and it's the piece that connects the blade to the swash plate down here. And it's these little pieces here, and just go out and get you some of those. It comes in a pack of, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 or something like that. But you'll want those on hand. The other thing that happens with these things, being black and they're little, sometimes they'll just pop right off and you just can't find them. They're in your carpet somewhere, they've flown somewhere, you find them, weeks later or something. But they do actually break and snap in half too. So you're definitely going to need some of those. Now, the very first flight that I had, I ended up breaking my swash plate, which goes right here, and it's where the linkages go to. And I broke the little tab off there. It has 4 tabs, so I was able to shift and continue using this one. But that occasionally will break, and you might want to keep one of those on hand also. The other thing that happens is the tabs out here and the bars that hold your canopy on, a lot of times those will break off. That's really distressing because your canopy no longer stays on, and that's part of the main frame. So I had broken off some of these front ones, and what I did is I went out and didn't buy a new frame right away. What I did was take and get a piece of steel rod, and I epoxied it to replace the bar, and it was approximately the same size and fit and worked really well. So you might want to keep some epoxy on hand, and I'll show you some of what I use in a minute. But that's a good alternative. But again, you're going to potentially end up having to replace your entire frame at some point because of parts breaking on it. The other thing that breaks a lot is your carbon fiber tail. This is a hollow tube with the wires running up inside of it. What I noticed was, after I crashed several times, I noticed it had a crack, and so it would twist a little easy. And I thought, oh, maybe that crack was kind of on the bottom, so I thought, well, maybe that's how it came. But over time, it was cracked several places and just got really loosey-goosey. So indoor flying hazard, you're going to end up needing new tails, tail booms you can replace, and you can get that at your hobby store or online. But you may want to consider some upgrades, which I'm going to do in another episode of some of the upgrades I've done to strengthen the entire unit. Another part that went bad on mine was one of the servos. And there's 3 servos, one on each side and one on the back. And these little guys can get dirty and start not working correctly. So on the web, you can find out how to actually take this apart and clean it, and I ended up doing that. But eventually this one actually went bad, and I ended up having to replace it. Now this thing I think was around $15 or so, so it was a little bit expensive, but I do keep one on hand now to be able to replace, because I hate downtimes over the weekends or waiting for someone to ship me a new piece. So you might consider that in your parts kit. Another thing is some of the tools that you might use, and I found this really nice screwdriver that I use. Of course they all come with this, but the problem with this particular screwdriver was that when I went into these really small parts and stuff, when I was trying to screw them in, yeah, it's got this nice pad here for your hand, but look where my hand is. This is about where I want to push and screw. Holding back here is really hard. So if you can pick one of these up, they're really nice because it's got the knurl right where I need to twist and put the pressure. So I recommend maybe picking up a new screwdriver, one of these nice models here, and that will really help you out. A lot of times your gear here, your main gear, will slowly slip down. You have a bad crash and it'll knock this down, and it'll start, performance-wise, it'll start flying badly, and there's a lot of reports of that on the web. And basically they tell you to just push that gear back up. Now the gear, unlike some of actually my previous blade model, it had a little set screw in here that you tightened. Well, these don't have that. These don't have the screw, because when this is rotating so fast that when you hit something, the shaft in the gear will let it give way. So it's just a push-on system instead of a screw where you would actually break your shaft if it was screwed in. So putting that on, tool-wise, you can, of course, pull your cage off the bottom and you just kind of push it on, hold the top, push it on. But if you push against these gear, it kind of warps it a little bit. So the guys that I saw on the web, they had a nice wrench, just a wrench that has a socket on the end, and used it to kind of put it on. I don't have one of those, so I ended up just using a wire connector, and it works pretty good, nice and lightweight. And I just put it over there, and then go ahead and push hard and get the gear seated really well. So that little item, cheap, you probably have one laying around the house, is a good idea too. I used epoxy to put a little rod and do some replacement work on my mainframe to make it last a little longer, and it works out well. That is one of the ways that I use the epoxy to help me out. Another way is, again, indoor flying, crashing like crazy. I've just busted my canopy all up, and also torn holes in where the canopy attaches to the frame. And so what I've done is I'll take the epoxy and I just filled that up, patching those holes, and it's made it a lot more solid and makes my canopy last a lot longer. What I will do in the future, when I do end up getting a new canopy, I'll immediately epoxy in there just to shore up and make it a little stiffer so it won't break on me. The other thing is I epoxy around the holes in the canopy, and that really strengthens them up really well. Now this one has been beat like crazy, and the rubber grommets have come out of it, but I leave the rubber grommets in it and just epoxy around it, get a toothpick and just kind of spread the epoxy around, and that's worked out really well for making my canopy last a little bit longer. The stuff I use is hardener and steel mixture, JB Weld, pretty common, you find it anywhere. And you just mix half and half, stir it up, and apply it.